It's to the war in Ukraine now, and Kyiv says its troops have liberated more than 20 settlements in the past 24 hours as they continue a rapid advance in the eastern Kharkiv and Donetsk regions. Now, earlier, Ukrainian officials said overnight that Russian missile and airstrikes on civilian infrastructure had caused widespread outages. Kharkiv's mayor described the strikes as Russian reprisals for Kyiv's recent territorial gains. And DW correspondent Nick Connolly joins us now from Kyiv. Nick, Ukraine says it has recaptured around 20 towns in the northeast. It's advanced all the way to the Russian border there. Is this a turning point in the war? Is that what we're seeing here?
Well, this definitely is a big deal. This is definitely the biggest change to the front lines we've seen in months. And it comes at a really crucial time where even some of Ukraine's most stalwart supporters in Europe and North America were kind of getting convinced that this was going to be a stalemate, that this would basically stay where it was with kind of position warfare going on, and that basically it was maybe time to come to some kind of compromise, maybe to try and freeze this conflict. And now this has really proven that Ukraine is able not only to defend successfully, but also to go into offense, that Russia's army is defeatable, and that even with only a kind of partial tranche of Western weapons, far less than the Ukrainian government has been asking for, that Kyiv is able to very effectively send those Russian forces in a kind of panicked retreat. And we've seen extraordinary scenes of Russian tanks, Russian drones, all kinds of high-tech systems left, even with their instruction manuals just dropped by the wayside. The Russian forces in their retreat from these areas seeming not even able to destroy anything, let alone take it with them. So this is a day of kind of amazed surprise here in Kyiv. I think most Ukrainian pundits hadn't even thought this kind of thing was possible, let alone on the scale that we've seen it.
Nick, journalists like yourself are only just gaining access to some of these areas. How reliable are the accounts coming from around Kharkiv about these Ukrainian gains?
I think we can be pretty sure that in terms of the territory and where they are, that is more or less reliable and correct. We're seeing similar reports in Russian social media, lots of kind of pro-Russian military, pro-government bloggers having to kind of find explanations as to why this happened, trying to explain it away as some kind of tactical retreat to reinforce the Russian garrisons in Donbass. None of that really seems to cut the mustard, even with their own audiences, and a lot of frustration on the part of the kind of pro-war party in Russia, that the leadership in the Kremlin isn't recruiting more people, isn't mobilizing ordinary Russians to come fight in Ukraine, a sense that this is a turning point, certainly, and that Russia could be about to face further routes in other parts of Ukraine. It is obviously difficult in terms of the kind of human impact of this. We haven't been able to kind of check lots of these stories. We are seeing some extraordinary images of lots of Russian prisoners of war, lots of Ukrainian flags in all these places, and I think for the most part it seems like the stories that we're hearing are being borne out by the truth.
Nick Connolly reporting from Kyiv. Thanks so much. And I am joined now by retired US General Ben Hodges. He's the former commander of US Army troops in Europe, and he's just joined the human rights organisation Human Rights First as a senior advisor. Welcome to DW. Can I ask you, how was it possible for Ukrainian troops to recapture so much territory in the northeast in just a few days?
Anya, I think it's a combination of three things. First of all, the Russian forces are exhausted. Their logistics are exhausted. Leaders have been killed. And we've watched for the last couple of months the deterioration of morale and fighting spirit of Russian forces throughout. So they don't have the will to fight. That's number one. Number two, the impact of weapons provided by the West, particularly long-range rockets, these kinds of capabilities have been very helpful in disrupting or destroying Russian logistics, Russian artillery, Russian command posts, really creating a lot of problems for the Russians in their rear area, which makes it difficult for them to figure out what's going on and to react. But the third thing is all credit to Ukrainian general staff and forces. They are disciplined. They've done a good job of protecting information, what we call OPSEC or operational security. And they deceived the Russians where the main attack was coming by talking openly about an attack in Kherson when the main attack actually was coming from the north. So really top level execution of an operational design.
Most military experts were looking at the Ukrainian counteroffensive in the south, in the Kherson region. So what you're saying, that was just a deception by the Ukrainians to weaken the Russian defense in the northeast, in Kharkiv.
Exactly. The Russians were taken in by the deception, as were many other observers. And so they began to shift forces down towards Kherson. And of course, Kherson is very important, and eventually we'll see Ukrainian forces getting through there as well. But the real purpose, it appears to me, is that they wanted the Russians to focus on Kherson, what we call reflexive control, and then that created a much weaker place where the Ukrainians could actually attack.
Can I ask you how you read Moscow's almost total silence on what we're seeing here, this defeat?
Well, I think obviously they are bewildered, probably some shock. I think that this is a system that never pushed up accurate information from the bottom to the top. So perhaps people in the Kremlin and at different levels had different views of what was really going on, how bad it was, or didn't have the feel. So I think probably some judgment calls were being made that were prejudiced by their bias going in about how much better Russian forces would be than Ukrainian forces. But it does also have the feel in these early days, there's an awful lot of finger pointing going on. I think we're going to see people being sacked, and you're going to have friction inside the Kremlin and inside Russia, both from ultranationalists as well as people who thought that the Russians should have never invaded to begin with.
Do you expect more of what Kyiv is calling Russian revenge attacks in the wake of the Ukrainian advances that we're seeing?
I would imagine so. I mean, the Russians have no other option other than to keep trying to kill innocent people, launching big missiles into residential areas like they're doing. And so they can't, with ground forces, really stop what Ukraine's doing. The Russian Air Force is hardly to be seen, and the Russian Navy is hiding behind Crimea. So I just don't see a real strong likelihood of any kind of a large military effort. And so the Russians will try to compensate by launching missiles into cities until they either run out or they are stopped.
Retired US General Ben Hodges, thank you so much for speaking with us here on DW.
Thanks for the privilege.